on this computer. All right, folks, we are going to get started. Can everyone see my screen? Joan, say yes, I guess.
No,
You
you
can't.
didn't hit share screen yet, I don't think.
Okay, let's see. Share screen. Share.
There we go. Here it comes.
All right, so let's get this started. So welcome everybody to our HUD Mainstream Voucher training. Some important housekeeping. We are recording this webinar for future use. The slides and the recording will be posted on our website. We will email everyone a link and all the attachments as well, probably by close of business tomorrow. We ask you to please mute yourself during the presentation and please save your questions to the end and use the chat box. So what we're going to go over today is what is the mainstream program? I know most of you are familiar. What's the geography? CEC manages 3 PHAs and there are some different counties on each one. How many vouchers do we really have available? Eligibility and preferences, the application process from start to sort of finish. And then we did some do's and don'ts. We'll also go over some of the outreach that we've done with our partner organizations as well as the wellness centers. And then we will open it up for questions. So Joan, handing it over to you.
Okay, so in a nutshell, Mainstream Voucher Program, it's a specialized housing subsidy program, very similar to Section 8 or the Housing Choice Voucher Program, sorry. It's specifically for low income and non-elderly persons with a disability. So by the HUD definition, that means 62 or under at the time that they apply and qualify in terms of the non-elderly piece. Moving on. Okay, these are the counties where we currently have vouchers available. And I know there was a question before we even did the presentation about why certain counties appear on the application. CEC, who actually was just offered the newest batch of vouchers, has vouchers available in Hudson, Middlesex, Mercer, and Passaic counties. So there is a slight preference given to people who live or work there or want to live or work there because we know we have more access to those counties. For CSPNJ, we are a statewide voucher program. So if someone is applying that is not in one of the targeted counties for CEC, we can roll them over into CSP, assuming vouchers are available, which between you and me, yes, there are some vouchers available in CSP as well. And then Garden State Episcopal Community Development Corporation is a separate agency, but we oversee their voucher program as well. And their availabilities are in Essex and Hudson counties. So again, we would steer, if there are vouchers available there, we would steer vouchers towards that housing authority that were in Essex or Hudson. So how many mainstream vouchers are available? Over the years, we've been awarded between the 3 PHAs, 293 mainstream vouchers. So one of the reasons that myself and my staff have been so busy is because we've been doing everything we can to kind of get those vouchers out to people who were sitting on the CEC or CSP waiting list since 2018. We found out how to access pockets of money that we did not realize were attached to those vouchers. So we've been, and some of you have probably had experience with this because you've been working with individuals. We've been kind of frantically reaching out to and attempting to lease up anybody that was on our waiting list. But as of now, we have 0 people on our waiting list for vouchers. We've reached out to everybody. So that means we need to reopen and we will have about 125 vouchers available. So we're going to take applications for the entire time that the waiting list is open, and anybody who qualifies will indeed get on the waiting list, but we should be able to issue 125 vouchers this year. And again, as quickly as we can get to them. In terms of eligibility and the preferences, the eligibility for this voucher is determined by HUD, so this is something that's set in stone. Individuals need to be aged between 18 and 62 in terms of the head of household, and at least one member of the family has to have a disability. In the past mainstream vouchers, it had to be the head of household, but now it's any household member can have a disability, and that includes if it's a family with a disabled child, which is a group we have had a hard time reaching in the past. The household also needs to be low income as defined by HUD, and those income limits vary per county. So it's something that you can Google and look up, but it's something that we will be using to qualify in order to put somebody on the list.
And I will, when we send out the application materials and all of these materials, I'll include the HUD link that kind of has, you can select the county or the geographic area, and it will give you the income limits. So just, you'll have that information.
Yep. And just so you know, and I'm sure if people have questions, they can ask, low income is the second level. There's extremely low, there's low, there's it's the medium level. It's not the lowest or the highest is the one that they're looking at for vouchers. CSPNJ and CEC are also allowed to establish preferences for the waiting list, which we have included. And so we have included homelessness, including all of the HUD definitions, not just a chronically homeless definition, and also at risk of homelessness, which is something that has been defined by HUD and also defined by us as if you are, we have included if you're in an institutional setting such as hospital or jail and have no place to go when you would be discharged. Okay, so it's a much wider accessibility than the continuum of care vouchers, which have been most of the vouchers you guys have probably seen. Recently, it's no longer for this program. You don't need that 12 months of homelessness. It's like 72 hours of homelessness counts as homeless. Or again, we are including at risk of homeless in those categories as well. Okay, the process. So basically, our application is available. They'll be on both CEC and CSP's websites from March 17 through March 19. So we actually have it set up so that at midnight or 12:01 on March 17, they go up. And then at 12:01 on March 19, they go down. Okay, that's the only time it's going to be available. If you, and that is also when we're going to be accepting intake of that. So if you fail to submit the application according to our guidelines, we have to reject it. I want to be really careful because some of you, when you get the packet, there is going to be an application in there. You cannot mail it prior to March 17. Okay, the applications, when they're mailed, have to be postmarked between March 17 and March 19. If they are postmarked on the 16th, we have to reject them. If they are postmarked on the 20th, we have to reject them. Okay, so if you're going in and it's towards the end, stand in line and get them to give you a manual postmark at the desk in the post office. Don't just throw it in the box and count on it being done before the 19th. And again, even though you get an application, more than likely by close of business day tomorrow, do not mail it until March 17 because we have to reject early applications because that would be unfair. Okay, and applications have to be mailed to the address on the application. It's our PO box. We can't accept a fax. We can't accept an email. We can't accept phone calls. People can't walk into our office. We're going to have the frequently asked questions go out and have this video be available because we're really not going to be answering questions during the 17th and the 19th. We're doing kind of a blackout period like HUD does during the grant application process. So what happens next? We're going to be receiving the applications. We date timestamp when they receive them, and we'll be putting them on the waiting list chronologically based on the date timestamp. So that's the first thing that ranks your application. Secondly, any applications which show any of the listed preferences, which are those questions that you're going to respond to at the bottom, get weighted by our software system, and they get placed on the list based on how many preferences in addition to a date timestamp. When we're ready to begin distributing vouchers, we'll contact individuals via letter to request all the supporting documentation that's needed to verify eligibility. So when you send in a pre-application for somebody, and that's what this is between the 17th and the 19th, it's the pre-application process. You do not need to supply supporting documentation. It's the honor system that the answers are being, that the answers to the questions with regard to homelessness, disability, so on and so forth are being answered truthfully. But when we go to distribute the vouchers, we contact you, and at that time, we need the documentation to prove everything you claimed on the application. Applicants have 2 weeks to supply the documentation from the receipt of that letter, and it'll be listed that way on the letter. And they become ineligible if they do not supply the information within the 2 weeks. If somebody does not supply or does not respond, the mail is returned to sender, any number of reasons why they don't respond in 2 weeks, we do have to move to the next applicant on the waiting list. I know during COVID, things have taken longer sometimes with certain pieces. We can talk a little bit about that in the Q&A, but the rule of thumb is that you're going to have 2 weeks to do it. Okay. Once we can determine all of the information and determine that someone is eligible, then we will be holding a briefing. We are doing them virtually through Zoom, like everything else. Still do them in groups. And that time they will receive instructions on how the program works, because we are required to explain all the rules of the program and how to stay in compliance in the program. That's part of the housing authority's requirement, as well as paperwork, including the voucher and the paperwork that they would need to secure an apartment. They'll also get a copy of the briefing booklet. And what we've been doing is that we've been emailing to either the individual applicants or their chosen designated contact all the forms, the briefing booklet, and a Zoom link for them to attend, and then following up by mailing all of those things to them, because we don't want people to have the burden of having to print out all the documents. And on Mainstream, you don't have to be connected to services. So, you know, if you guys can do that for them and print it out, that's great. We will also mail, but for anybody that has a concern about whether about receiving their items and not being able to print it out, you know, let them know that is not a concern. We will mail at the same time that we email. We want to make it as easy as possible. But we're emailed to make sure to get it on time, because we all know the mail is very interesting lately. Okay, so as far as the do's and don'ts, make sure you read the application and its instructions carefully. Please answer every single one of the questions and answer them truthfully. There is really only one section of the application that might be blank, and that would be on the upper right-hand corner. There's a portion they ask for, like your current address and landlord and all that kind of stuff. If the individual is homeless or not looking to stay in their unit, they don't have to fill that part out. Okay, but that's the only section that should be blank. Everything else should be completed and answered to the best of the individual's ability. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, because there's always somebody. Do not mail the application before March 17. If the postmark is before March 17, we have to just, you know, disregard the application. I said this, but you can't say it often enough. Make sure each application is fully complete, especially any question that's related to eligibility criteria. At this time, we don't need any documents in support of the application. Okay, moving forward, we'll need birth certificates, social security cards, et cetera, and you can ask about that in the Q&A. But with the application, we don't need anything with it. Okay, we're just assuming everyone's telling us the truth on a pre-application. We will request the supporting documents moving forward, and it's in that 2-week window, just like we talked about. Okay, so some of the things that we did as a heads up. We are allowed to send a heads up to the disability community and to those individuals least likely to apply for vouchers. That's considered part of a fair housing, affirmative fair housing marketing plan. Sorry, talking is not a strength today. So we sent letters basically to other mental health providers that we've worked for, the COC leads, other homelessness stakeholders, and as well as, you know, our wellness centers, our support services team, so on and so forth. And that letter just gave a heads up, the list was opening, and also the information on how to get an application and where to send the application once it's complete.
Right.
So I think we're going to Q&A.
Great. So thank you, Joan. I'm trying to see if anyone, there were no questions in the chat. Again, we can't say it enough. You need to fill out all of the pieces of the application and do not mail it before March 17. Please, that postmark date is definitely something that has disqualified people before, and we really don't want to do that. So again, I can't utter that enough. Michelle, I see your hand is raised. You can unmute yourself.
So I just had two questions. So on the first slide that we went over was saying that there's these various counties that CEC has vouchers, CSP, etc. These 125 vouchers, are they statewide or are they going to be predominantly in the Hudson, Middlesex, Mercer, and Passaic County?
The new vouchers were awarded to CEC.
So we have for sure 40 vouchers that are the CEC ones. I don't have the breakdown in front of me, that last chart Joan, you and I and finance went through. We have a good chunk for CSP, but the newest batch of vouchers are, I think for CSP, we're at like maybe, is it at 80 vouchers? And I think we have 120 around there. So there's still, it's a few more for the Hudson, Essex, and the Garden State Episcopal ones. But there's still, you know, a good 40 to 50-ish. And that's why I put that asterisk on the slide, because you know, as we're doing this, Joan and her staff are still going through the old wait list, and people are getting back to us. So, you know, let's say when we put the slide together, only 20% of the folks had reached back out. And then by now, 50% have. That's going to change that number around. So it's been really hard to pinpoint, but for sure we had 40 brand new vouchers for CEC.
So for this application, people in Ocean County can apply if they want to remain in Ocean County. They can still apply for this.
Yes. People can apply from anywhere. The preference is to those designated counties because we know we have vouchers available then. So they'll go slightly up on the waiting list. What would happen if somebody applies from Ocean County and say, like, I have 20 more people to brief from the old waiting list still. So that 40 in CSP becomes 20. They may end up on a waiting list if they're in one of the counties that's not in the preference, but they weren't on a waiting list before. So I mean, they'll still be closer.
Yeah.
So,
and I will add that, you know, I applied for these 40 CEC ones, maybe October. And if we continue to increase our utilization, HUD favors that. And with the new administration, there are a lot more vouchers that are going to come out. So by us going through utilizing all of the funds HUD has given us, we're going to be performing better. And if a new round of vouchers comes out, I'm applying for all of the PHAs, and that gives us the ability. And then if we get 40 new vouchers and we have 100 people left over on the waiting list, we'll have 100 people to work with. Does that make sense? I know it's not a perfect math, but we're doing the best we can.
It's better than the regular Section 8 that doesn't open for like 10 years and then it takes 5 years to go through the list and people are growing.
We were in that boat and then they started reopening mainstream.
Thank God. My second question was, because you were talking about a broadened definition of homelessness than HUD's. Does that
then the COC?
Yeah,
the HUD definition.
So does that include like couch surfing?
No.
Yes.
Oh,
I believe so. I'm trying to pull up the link.
Yeah, it said something about like a private place, but that's not supposed to accommodate you to be staying there. Something. I don't know that I didn't know, because you know those definitions are always up for somebody as individual.
Yeah, and I will share the HUD has a very easy checklist with all of the categories, because then there's the fleeing DV and all of that. So I'll include that so you guys can read it and understand we're not being subjective or like it's our definition. I'd rather just send you guys the black and white. This is what HUD says. And
I know HUD's. I just don't know if because, you know, that definition was a little bit different for me because it said that it could be a private place, but it's not meant to accommodate you. So I didn't know if
still HUD, but that's different HUD programs than COC.
Yeah, so
it's the expanded HUD definition. So it includes things like couch surfing, but it doesn't include a rooming house. You
Yeah,
know, so that's like the difference. So
Yeah.
like doubled up, it can be included.
Yeah, I just didn't know if like you're helping somebody to fill out the application, they say they've been couch surfing, are you gonna check that box, yes or not?
Check it. Worst case scenario, when we go to verify everything, if HUD has changed the definition, we can then, you know, they just would stay on the list. They would just be lower down on the list.
Mhm.
I think it's either under imminent or homeless under other federal statutes.
Yes. So this is the link, this is the PDF I'll include with everything. So here it goes, category 1, 2, 3. And remember, the homelessness stuff is a preference, not an eligibility. So if two people are same income, same age, same everything, and one is literally homeless, the literally homeless would take precedent. We would prefer the literally homeless person over someone who, you know,
Just couch
it's
surfing.
just everything else. Yeah. So again, I feel like this does a really good job of not only going through the 4 definitions, if you can see my screen, and then has the 4 record keeping requirements for each of them. So again, it's still not as clear as we would want it from HUD, but I think it's a good start. And if you're concerned or you're not sure, just say what you think it is, and then when we go and start going through the eligibility and the preferences, then if they really are under one of these 4 definitions, we put them on the preference, and if not, they just stay on the waiting list and they still have the opportunity to get a voucher. Is that clear for everyone?
Mhm.
Yes.
All right.
I have some questions. This is Lily Huang from the Bergen Wellness Center.
Mhm.
Hi, Lily.
Hello. So I got an application in my email yesterday. Is that the one we should use, or do you need to download it from the website?
It's the same exact application. We started our outreach this week. So we've mailed out letters to folks, to our partners, that, like Joan had said, folks at Demas and the continuums of care. And then of course, as our wellness centers, you guys are also getting that. So the PDF that will be online is fillable. So that way you can just type it and then print it for your members to sign. If you want to just make copies and handwrite it in, that's also fine too. The one on the website will be great because it'll be fillable and not everyone has the best handwriting. So but there's no difference to the applications.
Okay. Thank you. I have another question. I think you said that something about the being put on the list according to the time and date on. So does that mean that if someone mails it earlier, say in the morning of March 17th, that they have a better chance than if they mailed it on the 19th?
If somebody mails it on the 17th, they have a better chance than the 19th. In terms of when we're going to the post office, we're going once a day. However, your post office may have certain times of day that they collect and distribute mail. And usually that's earlier rather than later. But, it certainly makes, the soonest you can get it in, the best. But our date time stamp is going to happen, like once a day on the days we go to collect it.
Okay, got it. All right, so I'll tell people to mail it on the 17th, not the 19th.
Yeah, don't wait till the 19th, because if they mail it on the 19th, depending on where they take it in the post office, they could end up with a postmark on the 20th. So yeah, do not
Right.
mail it
You can
earlier.
go in and ask them to stamp it, right? I've
Yeah.
done that in the past.
People
Yeah.
have done that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we struggled with, normally I believe CEC and CSP have opened it for only 2 days, and we know we're going to get more applications than we have vouchers for. But I just feel like with COVID and with the way the post office is, I wanted to give folks an extra day, and do, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because I know all of you are going to be doing so much work to ensure that staff, that members are filling out the application and then dropping it off. And I know the post office isn't the most reliable these days. I would love to in the future be able to just do an online application. But I also know, I think COVID has shown us that there are inequities to access to internet
Yes.
and computers. So it just didn't, I didn't feel comfortable doing that for this round. So in the future, I'd love to have everyone's input about, is this too much work doing it on paper? The thing is, we need to make it equitable and easy for everyone to do. And I felt like doing it online, everyone that can do it online was going to have a clear advantage to folks mailing it. So it's usually PHAs do either all mail or all online. I haven't seen many that do a hybrid model.
Okay, for us at least, the printout and fill is a lot easier than the computer where you have to type it in, because most of my members don't have computers.
Right. And right now with COVID and all, a lot of the sources of free internet are not available.
And just to add, if everyone can print legibly, I just, for compassion out of Joan, Heather, and Natalia, who are going to be going through all of these.
Okay, could I ask another question?
Of course, that's what this is for. We still have half an hour.
All right, so say someone's living in a rooming house, could they use the voucher to move into an apartment, or is there any restrictions on where they can use the voucher?
There are restrictions. They can use it to move into an apartment. They just would not get a homelessness preference, but they are eligible. The restrictions are, that's all the stuff that gets that people go over once they get the voucher and they have a briefing, and it explains what our requirements are in terms of inspection and dollar amounts and so on and so forth for where they actually choose to live. But most rooming houses would not pass an HQS inspection. Some, nicer, newer SROs may, and we do have people that use vouchers in those. But for the most part, somebody would be applying to get the voucher. Because they're in a rooming house, they are housed, so they're not going to get a homelessness preference, but then they could use that voucher to move into more suitable housing.
Okay, so you're actually saying that the rooming house would not fit the qualifications for the voucher, and
Most likely not.
So they would expect to move to an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they should just leave, because you said that you should leave it blank if you're planning to move. On that provision.
That landlord information is the least important part of the document. That is the only part that you could leave blank.
Okay, all right.
So if folks weren't clear on that, if they want to stay in the unit they live in, not a rooming house, they can fill out that landlord information. If they want to move or probably want to move, they don't have to include that landlord information. Besides that, the entire application must be filled out, because especially those eligibility and preference questions are what's going to determine if you're accepted on the waiting list and moved up or down based on preference. Okay.
Okay.
I think Mr. Roundtree has been patiently waiting to ask the question.
Thank you, Lily. I think Lily had another question though. Actually,
Okay.
Okay. Are you sure?
Well, one more question. I just want to ask when people can expect to hear back to look for if they get selected.
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is that once we're able to go through all the applications and determine who's eligible or not, they will get a letter saying that they're eligible to be placed on the list, or a letter saying why they were not eligible with a chance to appeal. The last time we opened the list, we were only open for 2 days and we got 600 applications. So people are going to need to be a little patient with the time frame for turnaround, even on just hearing if you're accepted or not, because we are a 4-person office with lots of other things that we have to do at the same time.
Okay.
And I will just say, this is something that I thought of, Joan, when we were going through the application process. Either the 3rd or 4th page of the application is like a consent form to share information. If the person is in services and they want you to kind of be a contact person for them, fill that out and put your information in there. That way we know, like, if I haven't heard from Heather, but she put Joan down as her consent for us to share information, then I know, hey, let me go to Joan. I haven't heard from Heather. We have 5 days left before, we'd have to move on and disregard her application. So I definitely, if you have someone that is in services with you or a member of the center, et cetera, fill out that, have them sign that consent form, because then it makes it easier. Because again, services are not required or included in this. This is, for everybody, not just supportive housing tenants.
Got it.
Thank you so much for answering all these questions. Thank you.
No problem.
So, yes, so thank you, Carol and Joan, for putting this together and the great, presentation. You mentioned that some of the CSP, something about the eligibilities, how maybe CSP's definition of qualifications may be more expanded. Am I correct there?
You're using the expanded homelessness definition from HUD, which was those forms that Carol flashed on the screen briefly, and will also, I guess she's going to be sending those around. Many of the folks have been working strictly with the COC vouchers for a while, and that homeless definition is chronically homeless and literally homeless and so on and so forth. We are using the expanded HUD homelessness definitions, which include other categories. And I think Carol just put a link in the chat if you want to open it up, but we'll be sending that around.
Okay, because my question, from what I was hearing, I just wasn't certain. I know that through HUD, because you mentioned people that might have had the lived experience of being incarcerated, coming home from that situation briefly. So that made me ask, will they be subject to some of the same restrictions for housing that they would if they were traditionally to apply? I mean, maybe there's like drug offenses that I think laws are changing around there a little bit, but drug charges, normally keep people from, or traditionally have kept people from being qualified. So I'm wondering if they were going through this particular channel or through CSP, where we stand on that.
We do criminal background checks, but that's only because HUD requires permanent lifetime ban from someone who manufactured methamphetamine in federal housing program. So that's the only required. And then they strongly encourage banning folks under Megan's Law. For us, we look back 3 years. We do look at drug charges, but we look at them in terms of dealing, not possession, and we do have an appeal opportunity. So we absolutely have, under the mainstream program and under the COC program, housed people that were formerly incarcerated, and many of them have been formerly incarcerated because of drug charges. So,
and I put it in the chat. So as per HUD, folks exiting the justice system, if they're exiting an institution where they have resided for 90 days or less and who resided in an emergency shelter or place not meant for human habitation immediately before entering that institution. So again, if you're not sure and it's someone that has nowhere to go after leaving the system, you can say either literally homeless based on their previous experience or imminently homeless. So again, that PDF will be very helpful. And again, I wouldn't, if you're unsure about the answer, I would just submit it as is. And then when we go and verify, it'll just be whatever documentation we need. We'll just say, okay, yeah, this qualifies as a homeless preference or imminently homeless preference. And then if not, they still stay on the waiting list and there's still a chance you're going to get a voucher. Maybe not this round, maybe next round.
Yeah, you never know. It depends on how many people.
I don't want people to confuse the preference with the eligibility. Right. So as long as it's 18 to 62 and a disability in the household, like that's the eligibility. That's what, if it's not that, then we can't accept you. The homeless stuff is just a preference.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sorry if I misunderstood. I thought you were asking in terms of just eligibility for formerly incarcerated people, just like in general, are they eligible? And, yes, they are still eligible to receive.
Right. I was kind of
this program. Or we asking both?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. I think Carol kind of answered a portion of it, and I think Joan as well.
That's why we're tag teaming.
Yeah. So thank you. I had slightly some further questions, but it's kind of getting into the weeds. I think we'll be all right.
Sure, it's not going to benefit the rest of the group. I mean, I do want to, if there's anyone else, no one else is putting it in the chat or raising your hand. So please.
Early, but go ahead.
We have 21 minutes.
It wasn't directly on that topic, but Joan, when you mentioned some of the distinctions between drug crimes, I guess, or drug convictions, And as I said, some of the laws moving around, even as we speak, around harm reduction, around some of these things are basically pushing the theory that who makes those distinctions if someone was using or if somebody was selling, you know, because when it dwindles down, the factors are common. So, I mean, it's just, I didn't want to get too much into the weeds of a drug.
Yeah, honestly,
but
I have to, between Nicole and myself, I think almost daily we're reading criminal reports and we see what gets thrown at people versus what they end up pleading guilty to so that they do not have to be sentenced for some of the things that are thrown at them. We see how disparate the arrests are in certain areas and with members of certain communities versus others. So we tend to be pretty forgiving and pretty lenient on reading. So, you know, what it's officially going to say is that if you are possession versus distribution, you're going to be accepted. But when we look at them in terms of like everything that's there. And so just because a prosecutor said, well, we think you're distributing because you have X amount, if they're actually only convicted of something else, you know, we also, there's always an appeal. So when somebody comes in and says, yeah, you know what, this is what I was charged with, but this is what was really going on. And plus a lot of those folks will be talking about, I've been in rehab, I wasn't receiving mental health services, so on and so forth. You know, all that is taken into consideration. So I think we're on the same page in terms of drug convictions and what they look like and what they, you know, what they should look like. You know, there's very, very few people who have even been rejected for a drug history. It's usually if you see like, you know, there's just multiple, then usually they go through the appeal process. We do the rejection and then we meet with the management team and review it. And many of those even are turned over on appeal. So like you said, fortunately, a lot of the laws are changing, but, you know, until that happens, you know, we're stuck reading these like Chinese menu sort of, you know,
navigate.
Yeah, and it's
We do our best to be inclusive and non-restrictive to, you know, what HUD mandates, unfortunately, like there are a few that we can't get past, but I would say like already in the year and change that I've been here, I've heard appeals and, you know, usually people tell their story. I don't just look at the black and white report that's in front of me and neither does the rest of the CEC staff. We look at the person. So rest assured.
Thanks for the response.
Sure. So Lily chatted me 2 questions. What IDs will they need? Is a passport alone okay, or do you need a birth certificate?
What we need, a passport is acceptable because what we need is unfortunately proof of citizenship as well as documentation of birth date, because when we go to do things like criminal background checks, you know, if people have similar names to someone else, we need to have a birth date and be able to confirm that. And there have been errors based on that. So if somebody is born outside of this country, but they are now either a legal resident or citizen, we can take resident alien cards and naturalization papers and passports and all those kind of good things as well. Anybody born in this country who doesn't have access to the birth certificate, yes, we can accept their passport.
And then a question came in, can a member apply if they are on a temporary disability and in the application process for a long-term disability?
Yes, they can apply because what we will give you, if you, I don't remember exactly how it's worded on the application, but they either have to meet like Social Security's definition of disability now, because that's the same as HUD, or they need someone that can complete a certification of disability form for them, confirming that they are disabled. So, you know, they could get their doctor, their therapist, you know, whomever they work with that's a licensed professional that can certify on the form that they have a disability. It's not exclusively for people on SSD or SSI, although if you're on SSD or SSI, it's a little easier to document that you are disabled. Does that answer the question?
It did for me, at least.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. But that's actually interesting too. You just said that you don't actually have to be on SSD to qualify for this?
No, you just have to have a disability. If you have a doctor or a therapist or any other licensed professional that can complete our certification of disability form, then you are disabled. It's a really, what's great about this program is the shortcut for disability is if you are on SSI or SSD, that SSI, SSD letter is going to serve as both a proof of disability and a proof of income, which we can't do in some of the other voucher programs, but we still have that certification of disability form that any licensed professional can complete for the individual to document that they are disabled, because unfortunately it can take years to get a Social Security disability determination.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And just to be clear, I don't think I have to say this with this crowd, but somebody might ask you this. When it says disability, obviously we're not only talking about physical disability, we're talking about any disability, whether visible or not, as long as it is, being treated by, as long as it is recognized by a licensed professional.
And I just included the link in the chat with the HUD definition of what a disability is, and I did a little snippet. So definitely check out the chat box. I'm dropping gems down there.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is so exciting.
I'm glad. We are very excited. I know Joan and the rest of the crew are going to be very busy with work, but this is the best kind of work, giving people access to safe, decent, and affordable housing. This is why we do it. I hope, at least.
Yes, no, this is the happy busy. I know when we realized we had all these vouchers, it's like, oh, we're going to be busy. I'm like, but that's not bad. This is the good busy. The bad busy is when people lose housing. This is the happy busy, getting people in. This is what
So
we
we still have 14 minutes. Does anyone else have questions? Okay, I just personally want to say thank you to Joan and the rest of the CEC staff. They have been working around the clock to make sure that the application's updated. It's on our website, that we have everything set to go. The PO box is ready, and they will be the ones going daily to the post office to pick up the applications and timestamp them. And there is a lot of work that goes into creating a wait list. So just really kudos to the team, and please be patient with all of us. They will be going through the applications as quickly as possible, but if we get 1,000 applications, we have to go through each and every one of them before we are able to mail anything to anyone. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that we are really thorough and second looks on things when we're confused, because we don't want to deny somebody access to housing that is entitled. And then I see there is something from Diana about only citizens and our residents are eligible to complete the application. Anybody can complete the application, but to be eligible to receive federal housing dollars, you must have someone in your household that is an adult and is a citizen or resident alien. Like, they have to be legally here and documented. If there is a family where some members are documented and some families are not documented, we can assist that family, but we have to, and this is horrible, this is an old federal law, we have to prorate the assistance based on how many members of the family are documented versus undocumented. So if you have 4 family members and one person is undocumented, we can only give you 3/4 of a subsidy. That is a law that I hate, but that's how it works. It's not just the Social Security number, because some folks with Social Security numbers are not.
Well, no, I said and a green card or so it's basically for folks in layman's terms, like you need to have that Social Security card number with your green card, your resident alien card, or you're a US citizen and you either have you have a Social Security card and your passport or whatever. So in terms of if it's easier to understand it with the documents, that's sort of what we need. And I piggyback on what Joan said, it's horrible that if it's a family and 2 of the people are undocumented, we can't give them the full rent. And we want to make sure people aren't rent burdened, and that's the struggle that we have with federal funding. We're hoping that the new administration maybe takes a look at that. Especially with dreamers and things like that. It's a little antiquated. Any other questions? Great. So in recap, you will be receiving an email from me with,
Earlier today, I practiced my comments.
I just want to thank you, everybody, for the
Oh.
work. It's tremendous. I'm in another conference. That's why my video is not on. But thank you, everybody. I think this is a great. I think this is the happy time for everybody. But thank you, John did wonderful in that presentation. Very good.
Thank you, Victor.
Oh.
Thank you.
So that's
Great.
Thank
All
you.
right. So like I said, everyone will be getting an email with the PDF of these slides, a link to the recording, the application, but you know you're not taking it to the post office until at least March 17th, which is next Wednesday. There will be a pop-up that comes up on our on the CSP website. CEC now has its own website. We'll have everything on there, FAQs, and we will also be posting it on social media. I will be sending another mass email to our partners tomorrow. And again, we're not answering questions after close of
After the
business
list opens.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So close of business Tuesday is the last minute you have to ask, anyone at CEC, any questions. Besides that, we are going to stay shut because then it's not fair that we're answering questions for you and not for everyone else and helping one applicant and not helping the other. So please do not flood our phones. Do not call to ask if we received the application. Basically it's whatever we pick up at the post office. And we understand, that's why we say postmarked, not received. So something can be postmarked on the 19th. And if the post office is sucking, it's going to take, maybe 5 days. So don't worry about that. That's why we're saying don't call us if you have questions. And yes, it is whoever, it is a race to get these applications in. But again, we're hoping that this is also going to show HUD that we need more vouchers. And we're excited to get the ball rolling. So with that, thank you everybody for listening, and you get 8 minutes of your day back.